Hello, my name is Jeff Merkus, and I attend Calvary Gospel Church, and I have a testimony or a story to tell. And I'm going to title it, Having a Bad Day. It started off on February 27th of 2010. I was working at my own business, and I was working on a Ford truck, and I had somebody helping me work on it, and I was reassembling what we had disassembled. And I ended up putting something together that wasn't quite right, and I put a hole in the piston, number 7 piston. And this was on a Saturday. I was trying to have it done by Monday, and that definitely wrecked the plan there. So I was sitting in my office considering what my options were, and my wife had called me. Remember, I said, we're having a bad day here, so we have to top it off. And in the process, my wife says that her car, she's visiting her mom in the Appleton area, the Fox Valley area, that her car is making funny noises and it won't move. So I says, well, put the phone by the car, and all I hear is engine revving and the car isn't moving. So I'm thinking we got a transmission issue. So we make arrangements with her mother to get her halfway. The halfway point to me would be Rosendale. So I drive to Rosendale, and her mom takes my wife, Lori, and our 2 kids, Seth and Luke, to the halfway point. So I meet them as planned, and we're starting to drive back, and we get back to the portion of 151, where to the 4-lane divided highway, and we're there at between Beaver Dam and Columbus on 151, and this is where the day really starts to get bad. I ended up passing out at the wheel while we're driving, and my wife is a very level-headed woman, and she put the car in neutral and kind of shoved me off the steering wheel and steered the car to the side of the road, and then put it in park and pulled me out of the car. And she identified a problem pretty fast there and saw that CPR needed to be applied. Well, they really don't do the breathing thing anymore, it's just chest compressions. So when she got out of the car, she called 911 and then let it know it'd be an emergency, and then she started doing chest compressions on me. Well, by the grace of God, it wasn't about 5 minutes later, an off-duty EMT person saw an emergency. She stopped and either went through the ditch or went to the nearest place she could turn around and arrived to help with the chest compressions. When I was in the ambulance, I still really didn't have a heartbeat, so they were using the defibrillator. And what I found out, they used the defibrillator the maximum amount of time you can do to one person. And then we went from the side of the road via the ambulance to Columbus Hospital. When I arrived at the hospital, I came as a code blue. While this was happening to me, Lori had called the church, and she had gotten a hold of the church, and then Sister Grant got a hold of this emergency, and she ended up calling Glenn Usselman. And I was about to be loaded onto the helicopter, or thereabouts before the helicopter ride. I was going to be taken to the UW. He laid hands on me, asked the doctors if he could pray, and the doctor said, sure, you can pray for him. And then I later got a report from Glenn that said he felt my body, and it said it was cold, and it was clammy, and it was actually a gray color. And he was very concerned. From here, it was pretty slim chances for me. I arrived at the UW hospital, and I came by helicopter. They began immediate procedures on me. I was unconscious, so I can't say I remember any of that. Actually, I don't remember any of it. Through the course of it, my wife then arrived. She was driving herself. The doctors came to her, and there was a multiple doctors and nurses, and they said it looks pretty tough here. And they then started to ask her, should we take extreme measures to save your husband? And my wife, without a doubt, said yes. As you can see, I did make it through the hospitals 90%, and I would say I've also gotten through the 10% of brain damage. I joke with my friends that we're peculiar according to 1 Peter 2:9, but that's just an inside joke. But I was able to talk to the EMT lady who helped on the side of the road, and I tried to find out who she was and wanted to thank her. And in the course of doing that, my wife actually got to talk with her, and she always wondered whatever happened to the guy on the side of the road. She didn't really know who I was, or wasn't able to follow up because of the patient privilege thing. And we did get to talk to her, and she said that something that motivated her when this was all going down, because when you do chest compression, it's a rather tasking thing, and you can become tired and almost want to give up. But how my car was parked, it was so that my son on the back seat, looking out the back window, he could see what was going on, and he would often have to scrape the windows. This was February 27th, and I checked the temperature. It was just over 20 degrees, so he had to scrape the window off so he could see outside. So he was constantly scraping, and then he would kind of look through the window like a motion like this. And then this lady saw that, and she knew that she had to keep going. While I was at the hospital, there's some more stories there that I could tell. I spent 2 days in a medical-induced coma, and it was one of them. I really don't remember much of that, and probably for the first good week or so, I don't really remember anything. I've heard a lot of stories about some of the stuff that I've said and some of the stuff that was repeated, and sometimes I'm not even sure if it was real. It just seemed like it was just like a dream state. I can't say I had any type of out-of-body experience, but something I do remember is when I came to and was conscious for the first time, not really knowing where I was or what would have happened to me. I had this kind of thought or impression of how bad of a person I used to be and some of the things that I've done. And then I could feel the grace of God come over me again. Something else that really touched me was my older son had written on the dry erase board, he wrote the letter I, and he drew a picture of a heart, and he put the letter U. So to me that said, I love you. And every time a new person would walk into my room, I'd say, my son did that. After all this has happened to me, I've learned quite a few things, and one of the first and foremost is to be grateful. I'm grateful to be alive. And I think when you're grateful, you also learn about appreciation. And I can appreciate time spent with family and time spent in conversation and time spent with friends. After going through quite a bit, there's probably more that I haven't told, but I could tell. But I don't know if I would ever want to wish this upon anybody. But then again, I don't know if I'd want to trade it away. Sometimes when we go through things like this, it makes us better people. And I know I've gotten several messages from God in the process of this journey that I've been on for 5 or so years now. And that's no messing around. And things can't be the same as they used to. And when you're given a second opportunity, you really got to make the best of it. And then, one of the last thoughts I got is God came to me and said, this is the way it's supposed to be. And I got a couple stories that I could tell about a lady at Quick Trip with knee surgery, a man in Napa that needs triple bypass, and meeting my son just by chance at Brooklyn Mobile. But that's for another story. I've talked quite a bit about my heart attack, but maybe I could just tell a few things about my health, starting back in 2007. Back in May of 2007, I was 39 years old, and I was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. In 2007, December, I was diagnosed with non-ischemic cardiomyopathy. Then at the age of 41, again in December, but this time in 2009, I experienced atrial fibrillation. Then at the age of 42, on the date 2/27 of 2010, that's when I had the heart attack. And during that stay in the hospital, I had a 2-wire ICD implanted. And at that particular time, they were worried about anoxic brain injury, aspiration and pneumonia, and I had an ejection fraction rate of about 15%, and normal would be between 50 and 70. Anything under 20% in a reading is not considered an accurate number. And about a year after that, life really deteriorated to the point where I needed to have a pump installed. It's called LVAD, a left ventricular assist device. And that lasted for about a year, and then things were starting to get worse, so that required a heart transplant.